anywhere in Irish tax legislation. So it was only defined by a process of cases and case law. And it came to mean any process which is irreversible, which produces a commercially different product. So, for example, the ripening of green bananas in ethylene fruit chambers in Limerick, was irreversible and produced a commercially different process, ripe bananas as opposed to green bananas. So those bananas were in fact manufactured in Ireland. The sorting of coal, the marking of red diesel, the shrink wrapping of window blinds, the assembly of computer components, almost anything could be considered manufacturing if you went about it right. So manufacturing relief was fantastic, obviously, for multinationals. At the same time, there was a 10% rate around Shannon and the IFSC, which is the International Financial Services Centre in Dublin. These 10% rates were also due to expire in 2010 and 2005 respectively, and when they came up for renewal, both the EU and the OECD were on the case, and there was no way that manufacturing relief was going to be extended. One of the difficulties was, in offering a particular tax rate to some kind of companies and not to other kind of companies, there was a danger that Ireland would be classified as a tax haven. Now, to be classified as a tax haven is a very, very bad thing from the point of view of a country that wants to attract in multinationals, because if you're a tax haven, you may lose the benefits of all your tax treaties. They'll quickly be renegotiated, and the companies who are locating with you will not be able to filter their profits back home to their shareholders free of tax. So that's to be avoided at all costs. So they came up with the idea, okay, we will offer the same tax rate to everybody and we'll increase it from 10%, and the EU went, phew, that's good, said we'll increase it to 12.5%, which is not really what Germany and the UK had in mind. But this is how we have ended up with this very low tax rate of 12.5%, and it now applies to all companies. And this was really quite successful for a long time, and so as you saw, we had Dell and Intel and so on. The difficulty is it is an inherently unsustainable strategy. You bring in a 12.5% tax rate, you're either successful in attracting investment or you're not. We were. If you're successful in attracting investment, then your economy is going to take off. People are going to have more money. There's going to be more spending. Things are going to become more expensive. Property may take off. Even without the benefit of our particular Irish obsession with property would have taken off. It becomes more expensive to operate here. Now, remember, companies will go where they can make profit, so they need low costs, low wages, low taxes. Low taxes alone are not good enough. If you can make 100 million in Ireland and pay only 12.5% tax, you have 87.5 million left over to give your shareholders. That's fantastic. But if you can set up in Poland instead, where things are much cheaper, maybe their tax rate's a little higher, it's 19% at the moment, but if you can make 200 million there, instead of the 100 you'll make in Ireland, you'll still have more money after tax for your shareholders. So the tax rate alone won't work. Low tax rate makes you more prosperous, that makes you more expensive, it carries the seeds of its own destruction. So it's an unsustainable strategy. So the next move started some years ago to move away from low taxes to bring in pure manufacturing. And that is this thing of which you have all heard a great deal called the knowledge economy. And the knowledge economy is built around the idea of encouraging companies to locate their R&D, or research and development, here, and creating intellectual property here. So everyone, instead of working in the factory, everyone will now be scientists, except for the people who are making tea for the scientists, I guess. But in any case, we will have high-grade jobs, apparently. We will have R&D here. And the good thing about R&D is, the theory goes that if a company has R&D here, so they're developing their technology here, that's not as mobile, because the people are what the main assets of the company are. So even if Intel has 11 identical plants around the world, they can't necessarily move the knowledge, they can't move the people so freely. So it will anchor the multinationals and hold them in Ireland. So Ireland's current tax strategy is built very much around this idea of R&D. So we're giving massive tax breaks to royalties. We're giving big tax breaks for investment in R&D. We're actively encouraging very much the creation of intellectual property and the privatisation, I suppose, of intellectual property, and encouraging companies to take out patents on things that are developed in Ireland, because if they do, their tax rate will be much lower. Now, this in itself, people argue, is unsustainable, because it's not like we're the only people in the world who send people to university, and some people can do it more cheaply than us. So there is competition within the area of R&D as well, which is why our tax breaks are now being steered very much towards this. Because of this, the issue of transfer pricing will become more of an issue in Ireland. Now, we talked about transfer pricing, and we said if I'm a company and I'm selling from one base to another, it's kind of opaque, it's difficult to set the price. If the price is being set such that the taxing authorities in Germany, for example, are being robbed to the benefit of the taxing authorities in Ireland, Germany are the country that are motivated to tackle that. But they're the ones who are less likely to have the information. Ireland has, anecdotally at least, benefited greatly from aggressive transfer pricing. We'll put it delicately like that. There are companies in Dublin that employ 12 people who are obviously 12 of the most productive people on the planet, because they're making more profits than other companies within the same group which employ thousands. A great deal of profit comes into Ireland. In theory, we should challenge that, because we should, from an ethics point of view, try and ensure that the tax that's being paid is fair. But in actual fact, Ireland have shown not just a reluctance to challenge it. There's a quote on record from Albert Reynolds speaking to multinationals saying, "The more profitable you are, the happier we are." So as long as the companies are making lots of profit here, in general, the Irish government are content. And that's nothing uniquely Irish about that. That's a common enough thing. The company where the profit is going tend to be happy. But there is a risk with this, that because they're happy for the companies to be here and to be profitable, there is a risk that less real enterprises will be encouraged here. So it's one thing, I'm from Limerick, so you've all heard the Dell story. Dell are a computer manufacturer who recently laid off lots of people, and it's had a terrible effect on the city. Dell are at least real. Dell employ lots of people, and they do make actual computers, and the profits that they generate are related to tangible things. There are companies that are much less real. There are companies doing localization. So, for instance, there's an American piece of software produced, and it's licensed to Ireland, where somebody converts it from being an American piece of software to being a piece of software to be sold in Asia at massive expense. Costs a fortune to change from the US to Asia. It's incredible how expensive that can be. So you have this huge royalties coming into Ireland because of this switch, this localization, as though this kind of intellectual property is inflated. And that's more aggressive, and that's doing more of the damage to the developing world that Massa spoke of. I'd see I'm getting 10 minutes, so I'll move along. The impact this has on developing countries is largely as it